Setting vision is arguably the leader's most important puzzle piece. Giving employees something to aspire to that is bigger than themselves will enable the organization to find tremendous success. This requires a leader to build trust and provide clarity of direction. If the leader can do that, they will succeed. Lacking trust and effective communication, especially in a time of change, like setting a new vision, is going to create a fear response and increased anxiety of the employee base. Marcus Buckingham said that clarity is the antidote of anxiety. And so providing that vision, providing that clear vision, not only reduces anxiety, but it also is a great way of building trust with the employee base. Our guest today is a self-proclaimed leadership junkie, and he's going to talk about his journey of becoming the CEO of one of the US's largest law firms. I'm excited to host Tim Lupinacci, the CEO of Baker Donaldson, and my big brother.
Welcome to the Leadership Puzzle. I'm your host, Jeff Lupinacci, co-founder of Evolve HR Solutions. In this project, we're taking a journey to uncover the mysteries of leadership with some of the world's most accomplished leaders. In each episode, we discover the distinct insight from each of these great leaders, enabling us to refine our leadership skills and become more effective leaders. Piece by piece, together, we will assemble the leadership puzzle.
Hey, Tim, thanks for joining me today on the Leadership Puzzle.
Hey,
Great to have you.
Jeff, I'm honored to be here and excited to see all that you're doing and accomplishing. So it's my pleasure. I'm honored.
Oh, well, you know, it's funny because I usually start off talking with my guests about when we first met and that first touch point. I don't suppose you actually, you're my big brother, so I don't suppose you actually remember meeting me when I was born.
Pushing you down the stairs because I didn't want any competition.
Maybe.
No,
maybe.
I don't remember that. But
Yeah.
no, I can probably honestly say I've known you as long as anybody else other than I guess our mom. Because
Yeah, literally my whole life. So,
yes, yeah.
So you are an inspiration to me and one of the best big brother that I could ever have imagined. I've really enjoyed just watching your journey through your law practice.
Yeah.
So I'd like to start out there. I know when you first graduated with your law degree, you were really interested in entertainment law because that's a passion of yours, music and whatnot. But you ended up practicing a law which I might consider almost the antithesis of entertainment law, bankruptcy law.
Yeah.
What made you do that versus go into entertainment law?
Yeah, well, before first, right back at you on the inspiration, just watching you thrive and how you're denting the universe and helping companies thrive. So I really do just admire what you're doing. It was interesting because, as you know, we didn't have any lawyers in our family. So the law thing was really, I kind of joke about that. I kind of stumbled into it. I was a mass comm major in college and thought I wanted to go do radio and television. And I took a media law course that seemed interesting to me about things like the First Amendment. So I took the LSAT and then I did okay. So I'll go to law school. And but I did have an opportunity while I was in law school to clerk with an entertainment lawyer, which was really one of the important mentors in my whole life on a lot of areas. And he was a sole practitioner. And so he talked about whether I would come on with him and then ultimately, take his practice over when he retired, like decades later. And I really considered that a lot. But, with the law school debt was pretty steep and it's even steeper today. And I really just determined I probably needed to think about getting some of my debt repaid before launching into what would be kind of a risky venture. And the firm I joined had just started a bankruptcy practice with some lawyers from some other firms. And it intrigued me because I really had liked my bankruptcy professor in law school. Although I got one of my worst grades in that class from Professor Howard, I just was intrigued about how bankruptcy is a lot about solving problems, fixing things, because nobody's happy. The company's not able to pay their creditors, the banks aren't happy, the employees aren't happy. And so it really helped me to take advantage of what I think is a little bit of some skills about helping solve a problem when everyone's not really in a good spot. And so that really did intrigue me, and it led to a full career. Although I did, after about 3 or 4 years, my entertainment lawyer mentor reached back out about whether we should talk some more. And I looked at it pretty hard again, but just really felt comfort that things were going well in bankruptcy. And so I stuck, and it would have involved moving back to Nashville. So anyway, that's kind of the story.
Yeah. Any regrets? I mean, sometimes you look back on your career and you go, oh, maybe I should have done that. Any regrets not going to that route?
No, I don't. I mean, it's interesting. Just as an aside for your listeners, Daniel Pink's latest book, The Power of Regret, is really an incredible read, and particularly about those things about regrets. And they do get compartmentalized about things you regret not doing and things you did do, and it's really fascinating. But no, I don't regret that. I mean, it built a lifelong relationship with Randy Smith, who just passed away earlier this year. But and he really influenced my life in a lot of ways. And it did spark, though, because I love music, I love entertainment. And that's still a lifelong passion that I think helped me in the legal field to be the creative aspect. I think it helps leaders to really, be creative and try to infuse that into what you're doing. So I really don't have regrets about them. Sometimes I imagine what that could have looked like. I'm fortunate to where I am today, and that journey has, been fulfilling.
Well, you're certainly at the pinnacle. You now are CEO of one of the largest law firms in the U.S. I imagine you didn't set out in your career thinking, oh, I want to be CEO of a law firm.
No, I really didn't. And it wasn't even when I was practicing. It wasn't. I always loved leadership. At some point, I've really loved leading groups and teams, but I really didn't have that insight until really my predecessor had kind of been in the role for 20 years, had indicated he was going to step down in 2019. And it just led to a process during 2018. And I started really thinking about it. And initially, at Baker Donaldson, it's an internal decision of the board and for internal candidates. And there were about 6 of us that the board had approached about being candidates. And I initially had said I really wasn't interested because I love what I was doing with my team. But I really was unsettled about it and thought, well, I'll just go ahead and decided to put my name in the hat. So, but no real big ambition to do it at the time.
We're called the Leadership Puzzle. And so I want to start digging into your unique pieces that have created the picture of your leadership. As we mentioned a few years ago, you stepped into that CEO position, and there's a real difference, I imagine, of transitioning from practicing law or being, the partner of running a law practice to leading the law firm. So is there something about your leadership style that allowed you to make that jump successfully?
It's a great question. I think that I'd been doing a lot of studying and reading and trying to grow my own skills in that sort of whole genre of emotional intelligence. I guess some people call it soft skills. I'd really become intrigued about that's really could be a differentiator in leading teams and serving clients. And so I think that probably helped me in that transition, because what I think about is things like being curious, asking questions and getting feedback. That was pretty much a part of, we had, had some plateau years financially. And so I had a lot of people who had a lot of feedback about things that we could do better. And so I think that being open to that and listening, I think listening, of course, is a part of that. One thing that I've always been is, sort of the positive person. I see a lot of opportunities, and I think speaking into our colleagues that we could accomplish some things, we could turn some things around, and approach things more with that kind of attitude, and really just all building relationships. I mean, I kind of would bucket that under EQ. But those are things that I really had learned to value and really been working on. And I don't have it all together. I make mistakes in all those areas every day still. But I think that was a differentiator, because, I work with, I'm not the smartest tool in the shed. And everyone I work with is smarter than me, and they've got professional degrees and law degrees and MBA degrees on our business side. And so for us to get better, it's not Tim dictating, let's go do this stuff. We need to all come together. And so I think that might be the differentiator that helped ease the transition, that I kind of approach things that way.
So it sounds like you really brought the team together and let them shine in using their strengths.
Well, yeah, it was interesting because at that time in 2018, when I was really thinking through, and I jokingly, lovingly call my 50-page questionnaire that the board gave us to fill out. It really didn't start 50 pages, but when they asked each candidate to put together their vision and where they saw the firm going, and I was so. I mean, I really love the people at this firm. I love this firm. It's been great to me for, at that point, I don't know, 15 years. I really was trying to figure out, well, I really believe in us. How can we turn this around? How can we really thrive into the future? And when you looked around and when I did some investigation, the best law firms, the best professional services firms at the time were really thriving because they were acting like best run businesses. I think law firms and a lot of professional services firms, sometimes it's more like the old traditional partnership. And so I really talked a lot about that we needed to be thinking like a best run business, meaning we need to have the best professionals at the table with a voice, regardless of whether they have a law degree, right? And we need to listen to them and not saying we're going to do everything they say, but we have to think through it. We need to have expectations of ourselves and accountability for those who aren't able to do it. And, make sure we have A players in every position, things like that, like the Jim Collins kind of ideas. And so I really brought that. So I think short answer to your question is yes, it was bringing the team together. And there were some instances where we did have to replace some of those key kind of executive members, which we did too, that they weren't performing and weren't doing it. So we really, but it was all of that. I mean, I think that all was part of it for sure.
You brought up the Jim Collins, get the right person in the right seat on the right bus.
Right. And it's not about being, vindictive, or it's not about, it's not personal. It's about some people. I mean, I've heard someone say, there are some people you just need to release back out into the workforce so they can find the place that they best can thrive and they find their purpose. It doesn't mean that they don't have value, they don't have worth. It just means that for what this role is, they're just not able to accomplish it. And most often I found, which I didn't learn this early, because I always just really, wring my hands when we have to like terminate somebody. A lot of times they get it because they're not fulfilled in doing what they're doing. So it's still hard, but I totally agree with you.
That's right. Yeah, I remember reading your 50-page questionnaire. You're like, hey, there's some HR stuff in here. Can you kind of take a look? And I remember you had some big projects that you wanted to accomplish. Should you get the role, which would have required quite a bit of change management and leading through that change.
Yeah.
Can you share one of the big initiatives that you really were passionate about and how you led the organization to embrace one of those initiatives?
Yeah, I thought it was really important, and this, Jeff, because I mean you lived this out about 50 pages is something that, I mean, I know we're joking about the 50 page. Nobody can get their mind around all of that, particularly people you're trying to lead and to buy in. So I really had to focus on those core 3 or 4 things that would be the biggest leverage to turn the firm around and to drive it forward. And certainly like best run business was one of those. So I would say, of the first couple of years, that was the driving force. And some of it related to, and this is a very overused term and people overused it certainly during COVID, but never waste the opportunity, a crisis, never miss out.
A good crisis, that's right.
Yeah, right. And so we had one of our worst I was in transition. We had a 6-month transition for me becoming CEO. And in the middle of that, we had our worst fiscal year end we'd had in a long time. So there was a call and a hue and cry for change. It didn't make it easy because a lot of the change then when it's like, well, yeah, we want change, we have to get share value going the right way. But then when it impacts me, that's a problem, right? Another one was a big one was certainly just to get this culture of business development. I think we still had this mindset that a lot of times that the phone was just going to ring because we'd done excellent work in the past, which we have done excellent work in the past. But that whole idea of being proactive about, selling as an act of service, that kind of stuff, I think we needed to get better. We needed to fine tune that. So, and really a third one, and then I come back, was that we really need to say, what does the marketplace say we're really good at? Those, I call them centers of excellence. What are those things that we could really continue to pour resources in with an expectation of ROI, but that we could continue to do well? Not that we thought we were great at, but what the market did. So, but I think that's great. That's a plan. It's digestible. I called it Baker Next gear, the gears, because everything about Baker Donaldson, we have like Baker Fit and Baker Cares. We use Baker. So I did Baker Next because we're turning the page. I wanted people looking forward. It was a
Right.
very succinct, we had a couple gears of the things we were trying to drive. But then it's getting buy-in. And certainly I had buy-in through that lengthy search process. I think all of our shareholders had a voice in that. I was just a candidate, but I know that. So that helped. I felt like I came into the role with some support. The board
Sure.
supported and bought in. But then it was literally just going around to every office, doing town halls, listening, explaining the vision, trying to get people bought in, trying to see the why of it. Why are we doing this? It's not because we're trying to be or mean, or because, it was just, there's a why behind why we had to, do some things. So that's a lot of it, but I think it all comes back to having a plan, and a plan that is going to involve feedback and buy-in, and listening. So I think that's, and of course, there's all kinds of great resources on change management, going all the way back to Cotter. I think he's got
Yeah.
the seminal work on that. But
Oh, for sure. Well, I mean, it sounds like you did the most important thing for a leader is setting a vision of something that was bigger than themselves, that someone
right,
could grab a hold of and say, yeah, I want to be a part of that.
yeah. And that is totally true. That's another big thing. And again, this is all stuff I'm talking about is from making mistakes and the battle scars of not
Yeah.
getting it. Certainly, even from stepping into the CEO role and then we did get the ship turned around, and then COVID hit about 6 months later, or about 8 months later. And so then, of course, there's all that uncertainty. But I learned a lot about making sure the vision was clear, and particularly the point you made, Jeff, which I think is really important. I learned it through a lot of mistakes, is making sure everyone sees their role in that vision. Because maybe in that first couple of years, I don't know that maybe they could see themselves as, well, best friend business. That's just another consultant speak. I mean, even though I'm not a
Yeah.
consultant. But then when we did launch our Baker Vision 2028 strategy last year in April 2022, I spent a lot of time in the rollout walking through the what's in it for me, and how everyone who committed to it had a place at Baker Donaldson and could succeed. But I learned that through not really doing as good a job on that when I first became
Yeah.
CEO.
You stepped into the role having some challenges within the organization, and then you immediately got hit by COVID. So you've had to have an element of resilience and grit to kind of fight through. What is it that you do as a leader to make sure that every time you're getting knocked down for things that weren't even your doing,
Yeah.
how do you pick yourself back up and keep moving forward?
Yeah, because it's really hard, because I'm on that end of the spectrum. I want people to like me. I want to be a people pleaser. And of course, you're not going to do that certainly in a leadership role. But even like going back to your clients and everything. And I think, it's a great question. Some of it, I think, was the practice I was in, the bankruptcy practice, because bankruptcy practice is very much a motion type practice, meaning you can have multi-week trials in front of a judge. There's no jury typically in bankruptcy, but there's a lot of motions, and some of them are pretty significant ones. And so I think, and I'm certainly, there may be some lawyers out there who win every motion, win every case they do. It was not me. And it's funny. I vividly recall being in a case, actually a bankruptcy court in Southern California, and getting an adverse ruling that I did not see coming. And we'd been working really hard. We made some progress, had something that we accomplished, and then the bankruptcy judge totally undercut it. And I'm thinking, first of all, like, how am I going to tell the client this and all that stuff? Somewhere between, getting to the airport, getting on the plane back, towards the East Coast, I just came up with the game plan of what's next. So I had to deliver the news, the sort of the brutal honesty of it, but then having a plan. And the reason I think about that particular case, because the client said something in response about, she appreciated the resilience of having a plan. I hadn't really connected that to that, but I think that is one of the things. It's dissecting what went wrong. And again, like you said, a lot of times it's nothing that's in your something you did. I mean,
Control, yeah.
that may happen occasionally. It does happen. You do something, and then you can just undo it yourself and apologize and move forward. I think that's important. But I shared this before, but not today. There's a great example. Bonnie St. John, who was the first African American woman to win a medal in the the global Paralympic Olympics, and she had lost a leg as an infant, and so she's a skier, and in the Olympics that she won the silver medal, she was, I guess you do 2 or 3 runs and they do the total time. Well, the last run she was coming down the mountain and she fell, and so she thought, well, my opportunity to get a medal is over. All these things going through her mind. I'm proud I was here, but I'm done. But then she said, but then she forced herself to get up and finish the race. And then at the end of the day, like I said, she ended up getting the silver medal. And the rest of the story that she tells is that the woman who won the gold medal also fell. And so Bonnie St. John says that the reason she won the gold was that she was the quicker getter-upper. And that's really helped me, because it is true. As a leader, you're going to get knocked down. I mean, you're guaranteed you're going to get knocked down as a leader. But it really is about, and you need, there's some times I just have to take some time and really process it. And I'm not like immediately jumping back up and finishing the course. But then I think it is just having that in the back of my mind that I need to step up for our people, to assess what we could have done differently. Again, most times out of your control, but what could we have done differently? And then what are we going to do about it? With a clear plan and just being honest about it. So that's kind of how I've tried to approach it. And also, like I said, equally important is if it's on me of why something didn't go well, I'm going to apologize and then tell everyone, what we're going to do about it.
So, speaking of the team, clearly things go wrong. You lose a case or you lose a client. How do you keep your team motivated in those situations where they've worked their tail off and yet the result wasn't what they wanted?
Yeah, I think that's where it's almost even more critical when you got eyes on you, right? The team are taking their cues from you or from me, and you've got that burden as a leader. And so I think it's the same type of thing. I love, during COVID, I read a lot about Churchill and the World War II and how he was able to navigate through that incredible. I'm not comparing COVID to World War II or anything like that, and I'm not comparing myself to Churchill, but I loved his approach, because they talk about he was always brutally honest with the British people, but yet he had an optimistic plan about what they were going to do about it. And we're going to do everything we can to succeed at all costs, right? And so I think that's kind of that's mentally how I approach it. I want to talk about what went wrong. I want to talk about why this happened, and then but this is, I'm going to be optimistic and positive about why I believe in our people to finish and to keep growing higher, pushing higher.
I've heard you on some other podcasts where you have an aha moment. I think every leader has an aha moment that shapes who they are as a leader, right? Maybe it was a failure. Maybe it was a dressing down by one of their superiors. Can you share your aha moment with our listeners?
Yeah, it goes back a little bit to what I was talking about. Coming out of law school, I didn't know what it meant to be a lawyer. I didn't have any, I had the guidance of a few mentors, like I mentioned, Randy, but as actual the nitty gritty of practicing law. So it was very transactional. I'd get a project from my boss, I'd finish it, turn it in, and I'd go to the next project, not really thinking about anything else beyond that. And he'd mark it up, and then I'd work on it again. And I guess I'd been out about a couple of years, and I was working on a big project for a big bankruptcy case, a lot of financial numbers and counting of things. And I was working with somebody who was about 5 years my senior, and we both had to get this project done and turn it into our boss, which I finished my part. I turned it into the senior, the mid-level attorney, and then he turned it in, and I went on to my next project. Well, a few hours later, we got paged to come to Bob's office, which you never wanted to get paged to go to Bob's office. It would be a little gruff. And he was on a phone call, and he had the speakerphone on, and it was clear it was with a lot of people who were involved in this big case we'd been working on the project. And then he starts yelling at us about the fact that these idiots had gotten the project wrong. We had double counted a whole bunch of the financial piece. And it was right. We had messed it up, and he had all these lawyers from all around the country on the phone. And then he said, they're going to stay here all night to fix this if it takes all night. So we we finished it up around midnight and sent all the financial recalculations out to all the parties because there was a big hearing the next day. And I had drawn the
Right.
short straw to go to the hearing with my boss. I had to pick him up at his house, and it was a pretty quiet, awkward kind of drive. But then he apologized. He said he shouldn't have yelled in front of other lawyers on the phone, which I thought was just impressed me that he did that. And then he said that the biggest reason he was so aggravated was with me because he saw real leadership ability and legal ability in me, and that I hadn't owned the project and made sure it was right, that I'd kind of just pushed it off to the senior guy to get it right. And he just, and so it was really the first time I really remember people talking, leadership into me, that I had this potential. And it wasn't like I then went off and, the angel sang and I was ready to be a leader, but it was just something that seed really did resonate in me. And it led me on now a lifelong journey of trying to study and learn and get better. And what does it mean to be a leader? Because I really didn't have that lens into that. So.
And so much so that you've actually written a book about leadership.
Yeah, well, because I fundamentally believe it. And that one of the reasons it was so challenging, or one of the reasons I didn't even think of myself as a leader, because I'm just a lowly associate. I didn't have a title. I didn't have any clients. And so I really do believe this concept that everybody leads, regardless of title. I mean, everyone leads in your family, you lead in your church, your synagogue, you lead in community events. I mean, some people do have titles, but like some of the best leaders at our law firm, one of the best leaders at our law firm is a receptionist, I think is her title. But what she does so much more, she owns making sure that every guest that comes in gets serviced, and that any lawyers in the office who need something, she sees it and she does it without being asked. It's not in her job description. So I fundamentally believe, and have believed for a long time, that everybody leads in some capacity, and we can all get better at it every day. And so, yeah, I wrote a book over the last year called Everybody Leads, that really talks about a lot of basic leadership principles to help better lead yourself and then to help lead others, just based on sort of war stories from in the trenches of leadership, things I've learned through mistakes I've made. And then that also led to the creation of a nonprofit that's also of the same name, Everybody Leads. So I do fundamentally believe that concept.
Now, you work with a lot of banks and financial institutions. Have you seen a difference in leading within a law firm versus a bank or a corporation? Or are they fundamentally the same?
No, well, I think one thing, I think this is probably true across a lot of professional services firms. I think accounting firms and others are the same way. We're a very flat organization. Where a lot of corporate America and corporate globally are more hierarchical, and you have to do stuff because the person above you who you report to said to do it. And there's all these lines, and everything. We're very flat. I've got 300 shareholders in this firm who are owners of the firm. And so I've got to, again, that goes back to some of what I said. I have to get them bought into the vision of what we're trying to accomplish. And then I have to build that trust. I think corporate America leaders need to build trust too. I think it's like at another level here, that they have to trust me, that I'm listening to them, that they understand where I'm coming from, and that I understand them. I talk a lot about one of the concepts that I really like, which is another Churchill idea, is dinner table diplomacy. You really get to know your colleagues around the dinner table, breaking bread, more so than just, sitting in a meeting on Zoom or whatever. And so I really have worked hard to build those relationships with my colleagues, with our board members, to really build that trust. And so that then they do want to follow, because we're all in this together. And equally important is that I want our business services and staff to understand that we're not going to accomplish any of this unless everyone's, is performing and doing what they need to do. So I think it's more, well, I don't know, because I've not led in corporate America, but I know that the situation I'm in, I really work hard to make sure that we're all bought into where we're trying to go. And not everyone is. I mean, it's not kumbaya, but it's making sure that I'm open to listening to the folks who maybe disagree, and then trying to adjust if it makes sense.
It's definitely different. I mean, a CEO of a corporation, except for the board, if they say they want to go do this, then, barring, someone really trying to stop them, the organization does what they want to go tackle. Yeah. It sounds like you've got to have this networking and relationship and partnership that you have to build among all of the owners of the firm.
Yeah, over time, and it's not like I don't. It sounds like also you could get bogged down in like molasses executing anything, and that's not the case. But it comes over time of having it's building that trust. But no, and part of the challenge, and I think this is true with most professional services firms, our biggest asset are our people and their relationships with clients, and any one of them could have an opportunity every day to go across the street for more money to another firm
Right.
and take the clients. Now, there's obviously different ways as you build in long trusted relationships with clients that are across disciplines and offices that helps to maybe cement the client. But that reality means that I do have to, and I want to. I mean, I really, like I talked about, why I get up in the morning is get fired up is because of our people. I have to build these relationships where they do have a voice and I'm listening to them. But again, ultimately, I'm the same way. I report to the board. The board can hire or fire me. And they've been very supportive over the last 4.5 years. But I want to make sure that everyone, is engaged and believes in what we're trying to do.
So speaking about kind of the people, I can't help myself from taking an HR look at
Yeah.
things. You hear out in the news of talent shortages and how hard it is to find good candidates. I'm not as familiar with what's happening in the legal profession. Is there a shortage of lawyers, or they're still, are the law schools still, pumping out, a lot of good lawyers?
No, I don't know that there would. I don't think you could say that there's like a shortage of lawyers. And of course, most of your listeners would say, no, we got too many lawyers in this country anyway, until they need one, and then they're excited to do it. But no, I will say, I'll give you the example of what's something we struggle with over. It was about it. If you go back about a year, there was an incredible churn of associates, the younger lawyers, because so it was 2022, early in 2022. There was a need of all the transactional, the private equity funds, corporate America. There was a lot. The business was booming, right? Until we got sort of into the near the end of 2022, and then things started slowing down. So big firms wanted, like the Wall Street top 25, top 10 law firms were looking for people with experience, and they didn't have to move to New York. You could do it remote in the remote world. So they were throwing a lot of money to associates at sort of more of the, a firm like our size, and luring people away. Same thing with corporate America. They needed people in-house. So they were throwing money. I mean, we were talking about younger lawyers getting offers of 2 and 3 times their salaries, which we couldn't economically match, even though they're great people. And so in that setting, what we determined to do was to really hire ahead. And so like we had our largest summer associate class, which is a way that law firms do to do like internships to then hire for the following year. We had our largest class ever. Then we made more offers than we ever had to start the next fall. We started trying to fill the pipeline and just react and be aggressive on hiring people. Now, ultimately, it's like the musical chairs. Because that music stopped when interest rates started going up and there was all this economic uncertainty into the fall. And so we've ended up with people now, associates are staying put more often. I mean, although we've had some instances of, again, needing somebody and overpaying. So anyway, that's the approach we've had to do, is just have to then get aggressive and hire ahead, which can be hard. But one thing, so that's sort of the HR operational side of it. The thing that I have been influenced by for a long time now is a lot of the research in Daniel Pink's book, Drive, about what really motivates people. And I try to live that out at Baker Donaldson, because he really fundamentally talks about 3 things. And well, the first thing he says, you got to have market pay as table stakes. And when I came into the position, we had slipped behind market pay. So we've been working really hard to get that done. But then once you have that, I really talk a lot about purpose. Because I really think that my colleagues are, in their own way, changing the world. I mean, maybe it's a small W world, maybe not the global world, but like they're helping clients. We do a lot of healthcare work. We're helping clients who are serving front lines of helping people. We are representing, inventors who are doing startup companies and getting patents and on things that will help humankind. I mean, there's that, and you can say, well, that's kind of, again, that may go back to like this soft skill type thing, but it drives people to know that one of our lawyers in our healthcare lawyers in Nashville has a family history of some mental health issues, and she gets to now practice representing behavioral health clinics and the work they're doing. And so it ties, and then we tell that story to our people to drive purpose. Another
Yep.
piece that Pink's research talks about is mastery, helping people to feel like they're getting better, that they can master a skill. And so I've built out what I call a trusted advisor mini MBA, just about skill building and helping us become better trusted advisors to our external clients and internal clients. And then the last one's autonomy, which is really like the ability to direct your own career and things like that. So we try to, even though we're a big organization, we try to give that autonomy, particularly, to really be entrepreneurial. So yeah, it's a difficult market. And again, it's not a Pollyanna, hey, do these things from that book and it's going to be great. But we spend invest a lot of time and effort, particularly on the purpose thing, because that's what drives me. I mean, that's what gets me fired up. I don't say this out loud too much. I mean, I definitely could care less about hitting another record year on profits or whatever if we're having our colleagues seeing that they have a pathway to really accomplish their dreams and their goals. That gets me fired up more. So I don't know if that's helpful, but that's some things we do.
It's great that you say that you highlight that story of the lawyer who can then help the mental health clinics. Telling those stories that reinforce is, what you're trying to do in the culture and building that purpose will help drive folks to see that vision that's bigger than themselves.
Well, I mean, recent example in our firm is our Baltimore office. They had some they merged into our firm about 7 years ago, and then there's the integration, and then they had some folks who had left, and so there was a little bit of like uncertainty about what does this look like going forward, and with everything going on with remote work, we ended up having a full floor that wasn't being used of our lease, which was we couldn't do anything about for like 10 years or whatever.
Yeah.
And the leader of that office was having lunch with a friend of hers, and she talked about this John Hopkins program, partnering with Bloomberg about startup companies. And they were talking about the great work they're doing, but the biggest challenge they had is that they didn't really have a office space for the folks that were in the program. They were kind of serving them remotely, and so that hatched this idea of what I think it's called the incubator at Baker Donaldson, the Baltimore Light Incubator at Baker Donaldson. So we leased that whole floor for $1 to this nonprofit, and there's now 20 business owners up there, and they get to be there for like a year, and then it will rotate into new people. Well, that office is our most dynamic office right now in the sense of they've got a passion and a purpose, and they're investing in the community, and they're getting some accolades for it, but it makes people then proud to be part of Baker Donaldson in Baltimore. So I've seen it build on itself, that it does work. So.
No, that's amazing how you've been able to unleash the creativity and just the passions of your people. I think we've got a great picture of your leadership puzzle. So now I'd like to transition into a little bit fun, go to our lightning round.
Okay.
I'm just going to throw a handful of questions. So, if you could pick any superpower in the world, I love comic books. But what superpower would you want to have?
What I want to have, that's interesting. I think one of the superpowers that I have is like disciplined execution, really trying to be focused and disciplined about following some daily disciplines, and then really not just dreaming big dreams, but really executing on it. I guess I can always get better, and superpower I think would be important to have is to be more empathetic. I think sometimes, I think I have some of that gene, but I think sometimes I get so disciplined in executing. I just need to be more empathetic at times.
Okay. You run marathons, props to you for sure. What made you start running marathons in the first place?
To lose weight.
Okay.
I literally started it as a mid-year resolution, July 1st of 1996. And I started going to the Y. I got a Y membership. I still have the card when I joined that day. And I always had hated running earlier in life. And I started doing some elliptical machines, which I really did like, but they were really popular. And so invariably they weren't any for me to go on. So I started running, and it just kind of clicked. So anyway, lose weight and to maintain weight.
Do you have a favorite marathon?
I guess I'd have to say the ones I've done at Disney World, and the best part of that is you start at like 5 a.m. so it's dark, but when you come around into the Magic Kingdom, you run through the parks, it's still dark and Main Street is lit up and it's empty, but for the runners, and then you get to run through the castle, Cinderella's castle. That's pretty special.
Fun. So I know you love Disney. So what is your favorite Disney ride?
Oh, that's a great question. It's for a long time it has been the Avatar ride, Flights of Passage. I really do like the new Guardians of the Galaxy ride though. So maybe
Okay.
that. I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. Nice. You also mentioned earlier you love music. I remember you like following Casey Kasem's top 40, writing down every week, and you go to a lot of concerts. So what's your favorite concert that you've been to this past year?
Oh, in the past year,
Or ever.
ever. I mean, it's real special. At least Catherine and I, my daughter, got to go to Coachella when she was coming into her senior year or at the end of her senior year of high school, and we got to see Lady Gaga when she was filming for her movie Star is Born. So I actually claim that we're in that movie. I mean, there is a crowd scene. We were there, but I can't see myself. But this year, I mean, I think the funnest thing, at least Catherine and I went to see Beyonce. That was kind of a pretty good or big deal.
One more on the lightning round. We talk a lot about these leadership puzzles. What would others say your unique leadership attribute or leadership puzzle piece is?
It's a great question, and I love, by the way, your premise of this podcast and how you're executing and leading companies because it is a puzzle, and there's not there's not like one puzzle that everyone needs to do. You got different pieces and you got to figure out your own style, and then you got to get people come along to help fill in some of the gaps on your puzzle. So I really love that question. I would say, I mean, I think it really is just the positivity and the optimism and the belief that we can accomplish this that I instill in others. Because I mean, I think that's what I mean. I've had people tell me that like I didn't think I could really do this, and now I'm doing it. I think that's probably it.
Nice. All right. Well, I love to give my guests a chance to tell the listeners about something that's important to them, or a passion project. You mentioned it a little bit earlier. You have a new nonprofit that you've started. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is and what you're trying to accomplish with it?
Sure. So it really is this idea, like I said, about everybody leads, but I realize we do. I mentioned Baker Cares, which is our firm's commitment to work with community organizations, and we try to select a cause or a focus for a 3-year period, and then each of our offices partners with someone locally, and we're in the middle of a 3-year commitment to try to help in some small way eradicate homelessness. And so in going around to these various organizations doing incredible work, teaching basic life skills and how to get a driver's license and a bank account and get skilled to get back into the work profession. One of the things I realized was that there was like another level of basic leadership teaching and training that like you and I and many people have access to that some for whatever reason just don't get that access to. And so the focus of Everybody Leads is to try to bring basic leadership skills into underserved communities. That could include working. I've done speaking a couple times at some of these organizations that are helping eradicate homelessness. I did one last week on a group of folks who had gone through the skill building course there in computer technology and cybersecurity, and they were about to go into a networking event. So I spent an hour talking about networking tips, things like that to try to help. It could be individuals coming back from prison and trying to get back into society. I've done some speaking with some organizations that do that. Like, it's because somebody gets a job, that's great. They've got the skill to get the job, but now how do they deal with conflict resolution? And how do they feel about teamwork? Things that, again, you and I, and a lot of your listeners have the benefit of being able to access that others maybe didn't. So that's the focus. It's very much a work in process. I'm building it while I fly it, while I lead a law firm. But I'm trying to do work when I can. And so we've got a website, everybodyleads.org, that has some content on it. And so, yeah.
Great. Thanks, Tim. Yeah, everybody leads. .org. Now I just have one last question real quick and we'll let you go. What advice would you give our listeners on, coming up with a leadership strategy that they can help grow their own leadership capabilities, whether they're leading a small team or a large team?
The thing that I always think, and I remind myself of this every day, I love acronyms, and I've got an acronym. I think leaders need to have courage in what you're doing. Some of it certainly is belief in yourself, but courage. And my acronym is you need to be confident in yourself. And I think sometimes we have that voice that say, well, I don't know what I'm doing. So be confident, be out front. I mean, you're the leader. So you got to be out there, even if you don't feel like showing up. You got to show up, be out front, be unshakable. We talked about setbacks. but just be unshakable, be that steady rock for your colleagues, and have resilience. We talked about that. That is really critical, that others see you come back and lead forward. Being adaptable. The day doesn't ever go how any of us plan. So just being adaptable, a growth mindset and all that entails about what you can accomplish and what you can do. And then just be an encourager to others. I think it's good to encourage each other, and that will just help you feel more gratitude. So I would just say the biggest thing for leaders is just to show up and be courageous in leading, because you've got the great opportunity to influence and impact lives. So take advantage of it.
Oh, that's great. Courage. I'll remember that. Well, Tim, this was absolutely amazing. I really appreciate you coming on to the Leadership Podcast and taking a few minutes to talk with us today.
No, well, Jeff, I really admire what you're doing, and I think this is a great platform, talking again the leadership puzzle and all the various nuances of what leadership is. So thank you for this opportunity. It's been a blast.
What an awesome interview with Tim Lupinacci, who shared his leadership puzzle piece of setting a vision. He demonstrated the importance of creating a simple vision that people wanted to follow and the success that came from it. Well, thanks again for tuning in with us today. It helps us greatly if you subscribe, review our podcast, and share it with your friends. Next time on the Leadership Puzzle, I have the opportunity to interview Derek Lutz, the CEO of Lean Six Search and the co-founder of Evolve HR Solutions.